Okay. So Seif Aleph, Zayin Adar, Yom Petiras Moshe Rabbeinu, Chal Birov Hashanim, Besmichas Leparshas Tetzaveh. So the 7th of Adar, which is the day of the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu, most years falls around the time of Parshas Tetzaveh, including this year. Zayin Adar is actually on Friday this year, so right. Parshas Tetzaveh hi ha-parsha ha-yechida b'Torah mishenolad. Oh, sorry, I skipped a line. Ve'ita b'Sfarim sheyesh remez lekach b'parsha zo, and it's brought down in Sfarim, in books, that there's a hint to this in the parsha itself, meaning a hint to Moshe Rabbeinu. Parsha Tetzaveh hi ha-parsha ha-yechida b'Torah mishenolad Moshe ve'ad Mishnah Torah sheba lo nizkar shmo shel Moshe. So famously known to many of us, Parshas Tesaveh is the one singular parsha in the entire Torah since the birth of Moshe until later in Devarim, that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned. In the entire Torah since his birth, this is the only time that it's not mentioned. So it's, as the Rebbe says, seemingly, this is not random. Halo rak Hashem Moshe lo nizkar b'meforesh b'parshas Tetzaveh, aval yesh b'parsha zo ribu psukim ha'oiskim b'Moshe u'mityachsim elav. So it's only his name, that his actual name, that's not mentioned in the parsha, in Parshas Tetzaveh. However, in the parsha, there are many, many verses that are involving Moshe and connected to him. And this notion of references to him starts from the literal beginning of the parsha, as the parsha begins with the words, Ve'ata, in the parentheses, Moshe, Tetzaveh. So it does not have the word Moshe in the parsha, but it says, and you are commanded. Who's the you? The you is Moshe. So it's like you. So that you is Moshe himself. So even though his name isn't explicitly stated, it's a direct reference to him. And there are many, many, many commandments to him throughout the parsha. So failure to mention a tzaddik is the exact opposite of the concept of histaklis. Histaklis means a yortzeit, the day of his passing, or his passing. I just want to point out that that little Hebrew word aleph yud means failure or not. Because my first reading of it, it took me a minute to find that translation, and I was thinking that it was saying the exact opposite from what it's saying. So when you see the aleph yud, that negates the word, that means not. So the lack of mention, the failure to mention his name is the exact opposite of the concept of someone's passing. Histaklis shel tzadikim, shechen b'shah she'tzadik mistalek min ha'olam, ein hadavar pogeh b'shmo v'pe'ulatav v'hem nisharim la'ad v'einam mishtachachim chas v'shalom. So when a person passes away, a tzaddik passes away from the world, it doesn't change his name or his actions, and he remains in the world, and we don't forget him, God forbid. It's only his body that passes from the world, but the person themselves, their accomplishments and their name very much remains. So it seems ironic, what we're building towards the question, that the yortzeit, the passing of Moshe, would happen during a time when we don't mention his name. When a person, a tzaddik, normally passes away, their name is mentioned and their memory and all of their actions are brought to the surface, so to speak. Ve'im ken eichev shar lomar shehistaklos Moshe Rabbeinu nirmezet dafka al yedei hazkar shmo. So how could one say that the passing of Moshe is hinted to, is mentioned specifically or indicated specifically through not mentioning his name? When a person passes, their name in a certain sense becomes more prominent and mentioned more deeply. But here we're kind of recognizing Moshe, but without the name. So that is the question. Yeter al ken, Hatzivuim l'Moshe b'Parshas Tetzaveh nemru l'Moshe b'lashon nochach. Even more so, the commandments to Moshe in this parsha are written to him in the language of commanding, as if he's being spoken to right there, as if he's standing right in front, like in present tense. Tesaveh, va'asita, v'lakachta, like go do it, go. You're commanded, go do it, go take it, like as if he's standing right in front of you. V'kayotze bezeh ve'od b'ribui makomot shebehem niskar Moshe b'shmo b'smichos l'parshatena b'sof parshas mishpatim, and even more so in other places where Moshe is actually referred to by name, like the end of parshas mishpatim. Hareza rak be'ofen shel diber oidos Moshe. It comes in a way of speaking about him. Ki'ilu shelo b'fnav, as if you're not speaking to him directly. So in this parsha, it's as if Hashem is saying, go do this, go take this, go act on this, your command, go command, etc. Whereas other places where Moshe is being spoken about, it's in the passive. It's like about him. And this is what happened, and this is what occurred. And you know, from writing, I know we have Joni. Thank you for keeping your camera on, but a prolific writer. It's always better writing when you write like that, when you write in the present tense, as opposed to when you describe what happened. So here in this parsha, we have it directly written to Moshe. So Seif Beis, v'yesh lomar habir bazeh, and one might say, Ita bezohar, it's written in the Zohar, Sadika de'ifpatar ashtachach bekulo almim yater mibechayusa, that a tzaddik, after they pass away, is found in all the world more than during their lifetime. So I just want to point out another word that I got a little confused with in the Aramaic. The word ishtachach means found. Now it's not really, if you look at it close enough, but it actually at first glance to me looked like the word shachach, which means forgot, which is the opposite meaning of what the Sikha is saying. So I looked it up, or it's actually translated later in the Sikha, but it means found. It didn't really make sense the other way. So I'm just pointing that out. Hayinu shehatzadik la'achar petirato nimseh bekol ha'olamos. So that means in Hebrew that the tzaddik after his passing is found in all the worlds. Kolal ha'olam hazeh, even this world, yoter mibechayav, even more so than during his life. The perush yater mibechiyu. So what does that mean, more so than during his actual life? Who? Lo yesron stam ela yoter shelo be'erech shechen kibir Rabbeinu hazaken. So it's not just like stam extra in a bigger way, but it's actually more in its actual value. It's a tremendous advantage from before when they were alive. So it's not just like a little bit more. It's a lot more. It's a completely different ballgame, so to speak. And this is explained by the Alter Rebbe in two ways. So that was the first page of that yellow note sheet that I just sent you a picture of. So the first one, Aleph, in what ways is the tzaddik greater in this world after passing? Aleph, B'yos haTzadik chai al pnei ha'adama. So when a tzaddik, so let's just back up a little bit, is living in this world physically, hayu chai haTzadik miluvashim bekeli v'levush begufo. So the vitality of the tzaddik is enclosed in a garment. And what's that garment? That garment is the body. So all of the vitality and the energy and the liveliness of the tzaddik is contained within a body when he's alive. And therefore we can only receive a certain amount from that tzaddik. We can only receive a ray. So if you think about the tremendous light that comes from the sun, but then for us human beings, we can only really take in the ray. If we would get so close to the sun, we would evaporate. We couldn't handle it. But the ray comes down and it's not as impactful. It's not as strong. And therefore we can get it. Meaning a ray is less than the actual full exposure. So when the tzaddik is in the body, we can receive, you and I, from the tzaddik, a ray from him. Masha Enken, in contradistinction, Le'achar petiraso einhem betoch keli. After the tzaddik passes away, he's no longer in a vessel. He's no longer restricted to a body. V'lechen niten lekabel mebechinas ruach ha'atzmis shel hatzadik. And therefore, we are able to receive from the level of ruach ha'atzmis from the tzaddik, from the level, from a much deeper essential level, not translating exactly ruach ha'atzmis, but a much, much, much deeper level. It's as if we can receive from a much greater revelation, a much greater exposure. So that's the first thing that happens after a tzaddik passes away, sorry. The second thing, beis, petiraso shel tzaddik, hi aliyas rucho v'nishmato l'makor chotzavo. So when a tzaddik passes away, his soul elevates to the level of, from the place where it was carved, from the place where it was hewn. So that means obviously the place where the tzaddik was created is a very high place, is a place of in Shemayim, and is a much higher level than on earth. So his soul is elevated to a much, much, much higher level of godliness. Vazei af madrega zo shel hatzadik, kifi shehu b'makor chotzavo, nimsa kan lamata. And this level of the tzaddik, the level of what he's like up in the heavens, in the, I don't know if you want to say the factory, in the place where he is created. And obviously these are all metaphorical statements, and it's hard, at least for me, to wrap my brain around what this all, looks like in the heavens. But on that high level, that level of the tzaddik is now found down here below. So when the tzaddik was alive, we have the tzaddik as he exists, as he's manifest within a body. But after the tzaddik's passing, we can connect to the level of the tzaddik as he exists, or as he's manifest in the place where he was hewn. I don't know if I keep using the word factory. That's obviously not a literal term. V'nimsa shehistaklus shel tzadikim shnei katzot yeshba. So we see that in the passing of the tzaddik, there are these two concepts. Histaklus shel hatzadik begashmias mevia ima histaklus va'aliyah hatzadik beruchnias. So it's a little bit maybe, I don't know if contradictory is the right word, but two different things going on. That the passing of the tzaddik physically brings with it an elevation spiritually. Hu ole be'ilui achar ilui ad l'shorsho v'umekaro harishon. He goes up and up and up in spiritual levels until he gets to that initial source point. V'la'atzmiuso shelo shehi lamayla megilui legamre, to an essential level that is above the level of revelation. Maybe you want to say a level of energy that's above any form of manifestation in this world.
Tzipah.
Sorry.
I'll just put my 2 cents in if it's okay. I think maybe it also means that they go up into the worlds that they come from. So if a neshama comes from Atzilus, we have access to that strength. Because
Thank you. Yeah, that helps. Thank you so much.
And that gives us a tremendous benefit.
Yeah, thank you. V'lechen hatzadik einene be'olam begalui, aval me'idach bezman zeh lachar petiraso kol atzmiuso shel hatzadik hu be'ofen shel ish tachach b'kol almim. So therefore, the tzaddik is not in our world in a revealed way. However, on the other hand, in this time after his passing, his entire essence of the tzaddik is on a level of something that is found in all the worlds, ad la'olam hazeh, including this world. Mitam zeh nitan lakabel mimeno yatir mebichioso. Therefore, we can receive from the tzaddik more than in his life. So what the Rebbe has done is he kind of broke up that Aramaic phrase that we started with at the end of the beginning of Seif Beis, and he explained that not only is the tzaddik found more, what does that mean? It means that he's found in a in the, as Esther explained to us, in the way of his source from Shemayim, and we have greater access after the passing. So Seif Gimel. Al pi ze yuvan, hatam shehistaluko shel Moshe mirumezes dafka al yedei I haskar shmo. So from this we can understand, and that's always the beginning of the Rebbe explaining it to us. We don't have the explanation yet. How come the passing of Moshe is hinted to specifically by not mentioning his name? Hiskar shmo shel Moshe, but Parshas Tetzaveh. Shmo shel Adam eno etzem mitzioso. So a person's name is not the essence of their existence. And if you think, I think we had the announcement of a bris in our mazel tovs. So you have a baby, right? And it'll be in the Seichana paragraph that's alive for about 8 days without a name. So a person certainly can exist without a name. Inyano shel Hashem nidrash avor hazolas. And the concept of a name is really just so another person can regard you. The name is something outside of yourself. It's only so that you can relate to others. My husband told me a good mashal is like, the name is like the handle on the cup. The handle on the cup allows you to lift the cup, to use the cup, to utilize the cup, to access the cup, all those different types of things, but it's not actually the cup. Parentheses, adam achar yechol likro lo b'shmo, so that another person can call you, can get your attention, can talk to you by name. Ve'ilo ha'adam kishela'atzmo eno zakuk l'shem. But the person themselves doesn't, if you were here alone, you don't actually need a name. Kinira b'mucha shehashem nitan kama yamim la'achar lidas hulad. As we see that a name is given a few days, usually by the bris, for a boy, or for a girl, it could be also, some people wait, a few days after the birth. Ve'ilo mitzios holad kayamas tekaf mishanolad v'yotze la'avir ha'olam. And they're alive and they go out into the world before having the name. And if, God forbid, a baby's father would pass away before the baby has a name, the baby would still be an heir. He can still inherit property before having a name. So even halachically, we see that there's a status to a baby, to a person, before they even have a name, and can still inherit it. Masha Einken, Kasher hadibor la'adam hu b'lashon nochach ata, azeh hapnuya hi la'adam latzmus v'klalos ha'adam. However, when you speak to a person, the lashon nochach in a way of commanding, in the present tense, you, this is the inner essence of the person. The atzmus v'klalos ha'adam, the inner essential makeup of the person. Ve'al derech zeh hu b'nogei Moshe, and this connects to Moshe. Hashem Moshe nitan lo meshech zman she'achar lidaso. The name Moshe itself is actually not his birth name, and it was given to him it doesn't say many years, it was given to him a significant time after he was born. The odzot shebepashtus shemze Moshe nitan lo shelo al yedei horav, and even more so, it was a name that was not given to him by his parents. Ella al yedei bas Paro. Rather, it was given to him by the daughter of Paro. Kidei min hamayim mishisuhu. As she said, from the water I have taken him out. With the Hebrew word mishisuhu, I have actually outstretched her arm and she pulled him in, and that's where the name comes from. The zehu haremes beparshas Tesaveh lehistaklu shel Moshe. So this, and don't worry, we're gonna keep explaining. This is the hint to the passing of Moshe in our parsha. Bishat yislakluso hisala Moshe la'atzmio shelamaylo mibechin Hashem. So at the time of passing of Moshe, he went to a level that is above the level of having a name. So remember, there's an existence that's above the concept of name. That a person in and of themselves doesn't need a name when they're alone. They still exist. And therefore, he is not referred to in this parsha at all with his name, the Shmo Moshe, with the name Moshe. Ach be'emes, ach kan omed v'mishamesh. However, in reality, he continues to stand and serve. So that's a quote from the Gemara Sota, that he's continuing. He's still on duty. He's still continuing to stand and to serve Hashem, even after his passing on this higher level. The Adarabba, the Kol Atzmiuso, and on the contrary, not even that he just sort of continues to schlep along, but he's doing with his entire essence, Kifi Shehu B'maron, on the level that he is in the heavens, as thank you, Esther pointed out, on the level, on his soul level, on his source level, on the much higher level than he was manifest when he was in this world physically. V'lachen Moshe nimsa b'parshas Tetzaveh. So in this way, Moshe is found very much so within the parsha. V'adarabba hadibor elav hu b'lashon nochach. And on the contrary, he's spoken to, go do it, go take it, go get it, go pick it up, go, you're commanded. In lashon nochach, in a present tense, in a commanding sense. Hamoreh k'moshe mefarish hakli yakar, and this is explained as well by the Kli Yakar, al mehus atzmucha, on the words to his very being of Moshe. I did attempt to look up the Kli Yakar, but I didn't, so you could have homework to look up the Kli Yakar and get a fuller explanation of this point. Seif Daled. V'hina kevan sheshmo shel Moshe ena muskar beparsha kula. So, being that the name of Moshe is not mentioned in the entire parsha, muvan shetchuna shel kol haparsha Tetzaveh kashur le'etzem shelo. It's obvious, it's clear from this that the entire content, the entire message of the entire parsha is connected to his essence. Shelamayla Mishem Moshe, which is higher than the name Moshe, which I think becomes very clear when you think about the fact that he wasn't even born with that name. And he gets the name a little bit later, and he gets the name not even from his parents. So there's obviously an existence that he very much had, which was beyond his name. So we have a concept that the Rebbe brings out many times, that the topic, the content of an entire parsha is hinted to in the name of that parsha. As has been explained in many places. So we have to say that the concept of Moshe is hinted to directly in the parsha's name. Asher al pi minhag Yisrael, v'kedmipes b'chumashim shemahu Tetzaveh. And as is the custom of the Jewish people in general, and recognized in many chumashim, that this parsha is called with the one word Tesaveh. And that word is a direct reference to Moshe. V'yesh lomar habir bazeh ubehektem. So what's the explanation for this? You could say, al pi she'achad me'arba ofanei limud, hatorah hu halimud al derech haremez. One of the five ways of learning the Torah is the way of remez. There's pshat, remez, drush, and sod. So 4. I said 5 because I also talk about chassidus. So one of those is remez. Hakolos in inyan hagematria, and remez includes within it the concept of gematria, of numerical equivalent, numerical values for words. Matzinu b'sifrei gedolei Yisrael. So now the Rebbe is going to give us a little tangent on how to use gematria appropriately. As we found in the books of many tremendous rabbis, like the Baal HaTurim, Megale Amukos, etc., etc. Mikol makom yuva she'ein sadeh prutza. But we have to know that this is not a free-for-all. Sadeh prutza, meaning like an open field. L'kol echad lahamsi gematria mishalo. For each one of us, which I know could be fun to do, but it's not Torah, for each one of us to come up with our own gematrias. About kol gematrias zakuka l'makaira. Ela kol gematrias zakuka l'makor. But rather, the gematrias are connected to the source. So a gematria has to be, the gematrias that we pay attention to are the ones that are brought out by the Gedolei Yisrael. It's not just a free-for-all, just add up numbers and letters and make all sorts of fun connections. Kasher l'shtei tevos yesh gematria echad, adayin ein hechrach shekayemes b'nehem shaychos pnimius. So just because two words will have the same numerical equivalent if you add up the amounts of the letters. As just explained, that every letter has a numerical equivalent, so therefore each word can also, the composite of those letters come together and you get a numerical equivalent for words. So just because two words have the same numerical equivalent does not mean that there's a inner connection, a shaychus pinimius. But rather when they have a similar meaning or content, so this then brings together the connection of the numerical value of them. V'chen muvan gam mebiur Rabbeinu Hazaken b'Tanya, as also explained from the Alter Rebbe in the Tanya. Be'inyan hagamatria shehagematria shel teva moreh al bechina achrona shehi bechina hacheshbon b'mispar kama minei kaychas. The gematria, in a certain sense, is the lowest level. The gematria of a word, it's the bechina achrona, the final level. That it's the level of the mathematical equation and the number of many kaychas, of many powers that it has. Hakolim b'tevazo, that are kind of wound up in this word. Kolomar gematria shaveh moresh yesh l'shtei hatevos mispar shaveh. So when you say that two words have the same numerical equivalent, the same numerical value, you're saying they have the same kaychas. Maybe a good way to translate that would be energy. They have the same energy. Akolos or b'chaya shelahem. That's caught up in the light and the vitality of those words. Aval ein bekach kidei l'med shetoichen hakaychas shebeteva echad yesh. But it doesn't mean that the meaning of one, that you can learn out the meaning and you can go from one to the next just because they have the same number. Because the same amount of energy could be manifest differently in two different words. So I made a little diagram, I don't know if it really helps. The dot, they have the common source, and then they all go out and have a unique expression. So two words have the same amount. It doesn't mean that you can say, okay, this means that, so therefore this means that. Like, we can't jump to conclusions. We could just say that they're made up of the same energy. I don't know if I made this up myself, but maybe you could say you put 20 gallons of gas into two different cars. Depending on the car, it's going to manifest very differently, but it's the same amount of gas in each car. But I just made that up, so I don't know, take it or leave it. Ulam kasher yadua lanu shekayeme shaychus tochni ben shtei hatevos. However, when we do know that there is a connection between the teich and the meaning of two words, azay hagimatria mishatef af ki siman lakach shtei hatevos b'shorasham yeshem otam minei kaychas. So then the gematria tells us, then we can learn out from the gematria that these two words in their source, they have the same energy, ela klalos or hakayas, but it's caught up in the light and the vitality of the words. So stay atevos of the words. Ela shehem yardu memadrega lemadrega beibor miut echad miut ad shelo nishar mimenu meor v'chayas ela bechinas achrona. But they come into this world. And they go down from level to level to level, like piece by piece, until there's no connection with them in an obvious way. The only connection between the two is on this last level, this most hidden level, this level of gematria, bechina achrona, which is the level of the cheshbon, which is the level of the number and the calculation. And therefore they come out as two different words. They started in the same place, but they went down level until the only connection that you can see between them is the numerical equivalent. But this is in a case where we're saying they have the same meaning, so then we can draw from one to the next, and we can learn from connecting the two concepts. And we see that, but the only noticeable connection between those two concepts is the numerical value. Okay, so now let's redirect or come back home. In our study, what we're learning today, the gematria of the word Tetzaveh, Nusaf l'kach shehi hagematria habotel miyad la'ayin. It's one of those gematrias that you notice right away. So I don't know, maybe you guys did. I didn't notice it right away. I needed Sicha to point that out to me. But the Rebbe is saying here that this is one of those obvious gematrias that you notice right away. It's 501. So if you take the letters of the word Tetzaveh, Taf is 400, Tzadik is 90, Vav is 6, and Hey is 5. And if you add that up, you get 501. Kine habir dekamen miyused al tchuna shel parshat Tetzaveh. And here we are going to say that this number is connected to the meaning of Parsh and the content of the parshat Tetzaveh, below al cheshvan b'gematria, and not just through numerical counting. Hagematria shel Tetzaveh, he took top kuf aleph. So the gematria, the numerical equivalent of the word Tetzaveh, is 501. B'mispar zeh echad hayoter al chamesh me'ot. So this number, which is one more than 500, nirmezet madrega ha'etzem shelamayla mehashem. This shows us the level of the essence that's above a name. So we said that there's an aspect of a human that goes beyond their name, that your name is only something that you need in order to be called by another person. It's like the handle to the cup. You only need it to access it, but there is a concept of there's a level of a human, of a person that is higher than their name. And this is seen through the number 501. We're gonna explain that. The habir bazeh, and how do we see this level that's higher than the name through the number 501. And I'm on the second paragraph of Seif Hey. Habir bazeh, Amru Chazal, the rabbis say, Halach hakuchabrichu mehailech chamesh me'ot shana likno lo shem. Hashem went for 500 years in order to acquire a name. So at this point, when I was learning the Sikha on my own, I wasn't really sure what that meant. My son was home from yeshiva and he walked in the door and I said, oh, mental, perfect timing. And it was very good timing. This is a very, very deep idea that's mentioned in Kabbalah. It says here, Medrash Shmuel, that there is such a thing as, of Seder Hishtalshalus, of the way that things come into this world. There's 4 worlds, and each of those 4 worlds is subdivided into the 10 sfirot. And I'm being way too literal in my explanation. Obviously, none of this is physical. And when something comes into this world, there's, as Esther pointed out, we have the level of Chochmah Datzilus, or even on top of that is the level of Keter. And then it comes down through all the 4 worlds, and it comes down through all the different sfirot. And if you want to oversimplify it, you could say there's 40 channels because there's 4 worlds and 10 sfirot within each world. And then whatever the deep concept, so you have the concept of, say, a table, conceptually is a very deep, holy idea. It comes down through all of these channels, whatever that means in Kabbalah, and becomes this physical thing that I can touch and I can feel. Meaning that this table is actually a manifestation of an extremely deep spiritual concept that exists in the higher worlds. So that's Seder Hishtalshalus in my very oversimplified explanation. And Hashem went through that process, so to speak, of limiting himself and contracting himself and making himself small in order to come into this world and acquire a name. Because like we said, the concept of a name is only so someone else can relate to me. So Hashem having a name means the aspect of Hashem limiting himself, contracting himself, making him small so that I can relate to him. And this process of coming into the world in this way took 500 years. And that we're just gonna trust the Medrash Shmuel. The Mevur al Kach, Klolos Ha'olam, and this is explained, the way of the world, Seder Hishtalshalus, the way of Seder Hishtalshalus, Hu B'Shiur Chamesh Me'od. It's a journey of 500 years. Ba'al Yazeh Halach Mehalach Tav Kuf Shana. And through this, Hashem traveled, so to speak, 500 years. Nasa inyan liknot lo shem, in order to acquire a name. Gilu shel shmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the revelation of the name of Hashem. And as explained above, the concept of a name, so the concept of Hashem having a name, is so that another person, another entity, however you want to say it, can relate to the one that gets the name. So it seems to say that this was the an additional existence that in order that Hashem could be called through a name. Meaning Hashem essentially doesn't need a name. The only reason that Hashem has a name is so that we humans have something that we can reach out to, can call him in some way. Amnam hamispar tavkuf aleph, however, the number 501, because we said the name is a product of a 500-year journey. So, but 501, echad hayoter al tavkuf is one more than 500. So even if you're not so good at math, 501 minus 500, you get one. Voreh al echad yechido shel olam ha'etzem shel lamayla mitavkuf shana. So what's this one? This one is this essential oneness of the world, the essence that's above Seder Hishtalshalos. It's above the 500-year journey. It's above the level of Hashem that is manifest or is expressed through a name. Now it's not explicit in the Sikha, but that name is the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. That's the name that we relate to Hashem. But there's the level of Hashem that's above that name. Before he came down through that 500-year journey through the Seder Hishtalshalos to contract and make himself small so that we could access. So the brackets, V'yesh lomar, shezehu gam ha'hezber legematria shuva b'sfarim shel asher b'gematria tavkuf aleph. So I put that on the little chart. Yeah. And some say, again, you see the Rebbe's humility in these small ways, that this is the explanation of the gematria that's brought down in books, that the name Asher is the gematria also of 501. Because why? Asher Milashan Ushar. The word Asher comes from the language of Ushar, which means grandeur and greatness. Moreh al Tainug. And this is seen, this is indicated through pleasure. Shehu ha'inyan ha'naila beyoter ba'adam ha'kasher ba'atzmiuso. And this is a concept that's so tremendous in a person that's connected to their essence. K'maimer ein la'mayla me'eineg. As it said, there's nothing greater than pleasure. So again, it's the idea of one above. That 500 is like the regular, and then nothing is greater than oneg, so you have 501. Usher is one above the standard. That usher is related to the concept of pleasure, and pleasure is the highest level for a person. The al derech zeh hu gam b'nefesh ha'adam, and this also, we're gonna a little bit deeper, a little more of a deep dive, and this also is seen in the soul of a human being. Amru Chazal, the rabbis say, Chamesh Shemot Nikro la Neshama. There are 5 names to the Neshama: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida, the 5 levels of the soul. The Chamesh Shemot Elu, the Yechida Bichlal, Einam Etzem HaNeshama, Elahem Shemot Bilvad Shenitnu La La'etzem. But these 5 levels are not actually the essence of the soul. They aren't the essence itself, but they're 5 names that are given to the soul, to the etzem. The alpi hayidua shlemus shel kol misbar his kol shel eser pamim eser nimsha shlemus hachamesh shmot al haneshama hi b'misbar chamesh shmot. So it's known that the fullness of something is when you multiply that number by 10 and then by 10. So 5 times 10 is 50, times 10 again gets you to 500. Nimsa sheshleimos hachamesh shemot. So it seems, so it would imply that the completeness of these 5 levels, of these 5 names of the soul, is the number 500. So we also, the relationship between those 5 levels of the soul, I think I definitely oversimplified it because the concept of Yechida is overarching, is a little, it's a different level than the others, but there's these 5 aspects of the soul, and in their completion is when they're times 10 times 10 makes, like, if you divide each one by 10 and then you divide it again by 10, so you get to 500. The ilu hamispar Tzipah tafkuv aleph, but rather the number of Tzipah, which is 501, echad hayivater al tavkaf. It has one more over 500. Miramez al etzem haneshama shelamayla mechamesh shemot nikro la. So this is the level of the soul that is above the 5 names that she is called by. Ha'inyan haniskar la'aya. Okay, so maybe a lot of depth there. I mean, I think it makes sense in a very simple way, but there's definitely a lot of ideas tied into that. There's the aspects of the soul, and then there's even something above that, and that's the one. Ha'inyan haniskar la'ayel b'parshas Tesaveh. So the idea that mentioned above in Parshas Tesaveh, shetoichan haparsha hu etzem shelamayla migilui, that the concept of the parsha itself is something, is an essential point that's beyond, that's above revelation. Miromez gam de mispar hapsukim beparsha. So this is also seen in the number of verses in the parsha itself. How many verses are there? Kuf Aleph 101, Michael Siman, which is the sign of Michael. Every parsha, at the end of the parsha, there's a word made out of the gematria, or of the number of verses in the parsha, and it's like considered a siman, a sign for the parsha. So this parsha has 101 verses in it, and the sign for that is Michael. B'Lakutei Torah, in Lakutei Torah, it's explained. V'Va'er Rabbeinu Hazaken, the Alter Rebbe explains, as hachiluk bein hamiskarim kuf b'kuf aleph. He explains the difference between 100 and 101. So again, it's the similar concept of one above a complete set. Hamispar kuf moreh al shlemu shel seder hishtalshalos. The number 100 is a hint to the complete set of Seder Hishtalshalos, of the way in which something comes into this world. B'kuf Aleph, Al Chad Velo B'chushban, and 101 is one more above. V'mevi Al Kaf Medivrei HaMarasha, the Perish Maimar Chazal, and the Marasha brings in an explanation on a saying of Chazal, Eino Dome Shona Parku Meya Pa'amim L'Shona Parak There's no comparison between reviewing your learning 100 times and reviewing your learning 101 times. Shehamispar meya kashor lenefesh ruach neshama, aval ha'noshe pam echad yoter mizeh hu rak elokei mima'al. That the number 100 is connected to nefesh ruach neshama, aspects of your soul, but going one more time is the concept of Elokai Mima'al, godliness direct and above. So this is also in Tanya, which you might be familiar with. I believe the idea here is that 100 is baseline, is normal, but 101 is breaking yourself, is going beyond what's expected, beyond your expected capacity, beyond what's normal, not just beyond your habit, but above and beyond what would normally be accomplished.
What was the term you used?
It says Elokai Mima'al.
Okay.
And I am at the last paragraph before Seif Zayin, if you're following. V'nimsa hachidush shel kuf aleph b'yachas lekuf hu al derech hachidush hanal shel tav kuf al b'yachas letav kuf. And the concept, the unique idea of 101 beyond, above 100, is similar to the same unique concept mentioned above of 501 in connection to 500. That 101, again, is like breaking the boundary. Whereas 100 is the highest limit. I think we spoke about this once in one of our Farbrangans after class when we were talking about the Akeda. And I don't know, I just remembering now that I brought up this idea of the fastest mile, that everybody had run the fastest mile, that was a certain amount of time until somebody broke the record. And once the record was broken, more people were able to break the record. I don't know if that's the same idea here, but it's like the 101 is breaking boundaries. It's breaking beyond like what could possibly be expected or baseline or anything. And it's saying here that it's a piece of Hashem literally. And it's the same concept with the 501 versus the 500, that the 501 is the concept of the essence that's beyond the name, that's higher level than the name. The Alpi Hamivur La'ayil, and as mentioned, so now I'm in Seif Zayin, and what was mentioned above in Seif Dalid, Odos Tochen in Yanol Shel HaGematria, Yesh Levar Gam Ken Esatam Lakach, Sheshaychos Ha'inyan Hanal B'Moshe, Asher Mofia B'Parsha B'Etzem Shalosh Shalamayla Milchem Hashem. So according to what was mentioned above in Seif Dalid, the content of the idea, the meaning of the gematria, we can explain the reason that the connection to the concept of Moshe, where his essence is seen in this parsha in a way that's beyond his name. L'shem ha-parsha Tzipah mirmezet rak b'gematria shel Hashem ve'al derech zeh b'mispar hapsukim she'beparsha. And it's only seen through a hint. It's seen through a gematria, through the gematria of the word Tesaveh. It's hinted. The Rebbe says only in a gematria to his name, as well as the number of psukim in this parsha. So it's all coming through a hint. It's not a direct reference. It's coming through the hint of gematria, and it's coming through the hint of the number of psukim in the parsha, our reference to Moshe. Since we are right now engaged with the concept of essence that's above the level of revelation, Nirmez hadavar b'gematria. So too, the idea, the concept is brought to us through the agency of gematria. It's not spelled out. It's not straightforward. Shehi bechinas achrona, which is the final level, bechina achrona. She'ein ba kol gilui. It doesn't have the same revelation. Shel toichen hadavar kiniskar be'arucha. It doesn't have the same level of revelation of if something was outright. V'davka behelam zeh shel habechina achrona, and it's specifically in this concealment, in this final level, this gematria, mispar hateva, the numerical value of the word, nimsa ha'etzem shelamayla mehagilui. From there, we can see the essence, which is above revelation. Okay, so a lot of like very deep ideas packed into this very short, relatively short, I should say, sikha.
Sorry,
Fun
maybe.
to prepare it.
Thank you so much, Tzipah. Could I ask you a question right away?
Sure. Maybe I'll just stop the recording, but yeah, sure.
You can stop.